Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kay Jacobson, a librarian with Ramsey County Libraries, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to this webinar, Schools of Psychology, with our presenter, JB Andersen. Today's program is brought to you through the co-sponsorship of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute of the University of Minnesota, also known as OLLI, with the financial support of the Ramsey County Libraries. We're grateful to both of these organizations for making this program happen. And there he is. So, JB, handing it over to you.
Thank you. It takes me a little short minute here to get signed in. We did a few slides last week on psychosexual development. I'm going to start over with that group of slides, and then we'll go on to other subjects. What? There we go. There are five psychosexual stages: are oral, which is up to age 1 year; anal, 1 to 3 years; phallic, 3 to 6 years; latency, 6 years to puberty; and then genital, which is puberty and actually through adulthood. And these are Freud terms. Some people move smoothly through each of these stages, other people do not. Sometimes people get fixated on a stage, never develop upward from it, or may with counseling. So it's a cloudy situation for some people. Two reasons why these stage movements stop. First, you didn't meet the needs of the stage that you're in. That allows you to advance. Stress, anxiety can result. Other people are moving forward, you are not. Second reason is you get overly gratified at one of these stages. You don't want to move out of it. You just enjoy the way life is for you at that stage. And that's frequently called over gratification at one stage, locks you into that stage. 5 stages. Introduction first. Again, there's the list of stages. Oops, there we go. First, oral stage. It's centered around the mouth. And there are indications that you haven't moved out of that stage. Nail biting, which we see occasionally in adults. Any group that you're in, you might see a person that's 40 years old and biting their nails, or smoking, which involves the mouth, the oral area. So nail biting, smoking are indications that you are fixated at the oral stage, which people generally move out of at the age of 1 year. Freud smoked cigars. He was asked about this. He said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Anal stage. This is controlling your bowels, your bowel movements. Gives a child a sense of self-control. It no longer is something you do in a diaper. It's now something, a place you go to, you sit, and you're in control of it. Potty training is critical during this anal stage, 1 to 3 years of age. And it's very critical that you have a positive outcome here in this stage. Relationships with authority is developed. You've got a device where you will now be crapping, and you have someone telling you how to use it. when to come to it, and they sit with you and watch. And so there's a person of authority that's getting you started. A controlling parent will tell you when and where. No, this isn't a good time. This leads to an anal retentive person, which is a person that's excessively orderly and fussy and have very nice looking desktops. Anal retentive person, no messes in the house. Overly tidy. Look at this desktop. Desk, work, home, every place in the home. No messes, overly tidy. Tidy. There's on the left, shows you a person that's a bit on the messy side. The pencils are turned down, the books are askance. There's food with a half-bitten cookie, etc. And this is afterwards, or this is an overly tidy person. Everything is arranged well, the books, the pencils, etc. Hercule Poirot, fictional detective. This is David Suchet, who did 61 episodes on the BBC of Hercule Poirot. And he was kind of OCD. He was overly uh, anti-mess person. And you can see that he'd sit down in front of someone else's desk having a conversation with them, and he'd start moving stuff around. And it's described in the books also. Possessions are held very close by anal retentive people if you're fixated in this anal stage. And you don't share. You have objects, you have money, you don't give that stuff away, or you don't give it to somebody to use for a while. That's my stuff. Anal expulsive person is a very sharing person. They were not controlled during potty training. Anal expulsive, but they have a messier lifestyle, as you can see in this desktop here. Very disorganized, frequently rebellious toward other people, including parents if you're locked into this stage in childhood, or a spouse and children if you marry and have children, rebellious toward other people. The phallic stage is next. 3 to 6 years of age. This is where we try to find pleasure for ourselves, frequently at the expense of other people. We search for love and attachment. There's a little boy in the graphic with his sister, and he's just holds her closely and wants to know that somebody cares. And you learn to deal with jealousy during the phallic stage, 3 to 6 years. You deal with rejection. Why doesn't that person want to talk to me? Rivalry. I'm better at that than he is or she is or whatever it might be. And aspects of love. Who cares the most? Who cares the least? How do I become what I want? And emotions. Latency stage. This is called a hidden stage. Sexual impulses we're unaware of them. They're hidden. If they show up, we reject them. We tend to hang out with people of the same sex. And it's not just a tendency. These associations this is common. It's all girls, all boys from about 6 years old up until puberty, a period of maybe 6 to 9 years, called the hidden stage again. Friendship development occurs. You do a lot of stuff with other people. Hobbies are developed, might be games, and it might be like Monopoly, where you play it with 3 other people. So there's associations, but you find things that you like to do, and you find out what sorts of friends you want to have. Lots of games are played. You're in school, so there's a concentration on school and the school environment. Attendance is a big deal. Do you get to school on time, etc.? And you have work to do away from school, homework. So there are things that involve you in organization, and it's heavy learning period. Again, latency, 6 years to puberty. It's front and center in your concerns. You're acquiring skills, you're acquiring knowledge, both at home, domestically, and in an organized public situation such as the schoolhouse. You're on the trail to adulthood. Genital stage. This is sexual discovery, puberty to adulthood. It's development of single relationship. Conflicts often get developed. You're living very closely with someone else, so generally leads to sexual perversions sometimes if you fixate at this stage. And you might even fall backward as a result to an earlier stage of development. And this is called reversion. An example of reversion, you really like kissing. It's not sexual completion that you want. It's you're in the oral phase. So kissing is more important than completion. Next major topic is conscious versus the subconscious, another major Freudian idea. Awareness of what you do was total in the 1800s, at least theoretically. People thought anything you do or say, you believe that, you're involved with it, you know about it. I mean, there was no subconscious theory through most of the 1800s. Then in the 1900s, my sound has, oh, sorry. Okay, somehow or another, my phone thought I was asking it a question. Anyhow, in the 1900s, we have theories that were developed. Most of what you are is hidden from you. You're unaware of it. You have a subconscious. The unconscious mind that Freud developed and wrote about changed all of that 1800 stuff about full awareness. And it changed the criminal system. All of a sudden, you're not aware of what you're doing. So we now have first-degree murder. That's where you plan ahead, you load the gun, you make sure everything is in place, and then you go somewhere and shoot somebody. Then we have second-degree murder. That might be based on anger. You've got a gun, you pick it up and shoot somebody. It's just not planned in advance. It's a angry response to something, maybe. You're aware of what you do, you get a longer criminal sentence. First degree murder, okay, life in prison, no chance for parole. Second degree murder, you have 30 years. Manslaughter, that was an accident. You might get 5 years, maybe nothing, probation, maybe. things like that. The cure in Freudian terms is you make the patient more aware of these things that are hidden. And most of what we are is hidden from us. Freud's death. He died of cancer, and it was caused by his smoking of cigars. And you can see here, this is cancer of the mouth. Notice there's red spots in the mouth. There's white spots in the mouth. These patches indicate that cancer has formed. So the lips, gums, the jaw, the palate are involved in the kind of cancer, oral cancer that Freud died from. Started 16 years before his death, so he had it for quite a while. Made swallowing very difficult. Freud's legacy. We're going to talk about some other people also. Copernicus made us less than a speck in the universe. We are nothing. I mean, the graphic here is one galaxy. There are millions of galaxies, and we are on a tiny little planet out on the edge of one of these galaxies. We're less than a speck, whatever you'd call that. We're total minutia. Darwin, he stated we're descended from slime. Started with one cell animals that lived in a slimy environment, and then evolution is where we came from out of that. So anyhow, and slime is a kid's toy. Freud showed us to be violent, possessive, and unreasoning. These are very negative things. Caused religion to start to identify with a more positive approach. It used to be religiously in Christianity, you're a speck of sand on the seesaw. Now, you are very special in the eyes of God. You are a person, and there's a creator aware of you. We had religion versus democracy. Some people are in charge. God has appointed them, the divine right of kings, etc. Then democracy comes along, and that kind of flies in the face of religion. You no longer have a state-supported religion. You have freedom of religions, etc. And then religion versus psychology. Religion has a view of humans. Psychology also has a view of humans, and it's quite different. Positive interpretation, next 3 pages. Copernicus showed us the truth of the universe. We don't have to look at it as we're less than a speck, but we get to see what it actually is. And the sun's at the center of our solar system, and it's massive in size. We're not at the center of the solar system, as religious people had believed. So we get the heliocentric universe. We have a much better idea of where we are. Darwin showed us the interrelationship of all living things. It wasn't just, you're descended from slime. It was about all sorts of species that have evolved throughout the last 3 billion years or so. Freud showed us how to live with shortcomings and overcome them. These are more positive views of what these 3 men did. We're going to take a look next at case studies. And we're going to look at 6. Ida Bauer, patient of Freud's, Hermann Graf, Ernst Lanzer, Daniel Schreiber, Sergei Pankiev and Bertha Pappenheim. Ida Bauer lived from 1882 to 1945. She died at the roughly the age of 63. Nickname was Dora. So Ida Bauer, Dora. Here's a picture of her as a child. Her parents were friends with another couple. They would frequently go to this other couple's home. The other couple would come to their home. So Ida knew these people. She accused the male friend of her parents of making sexual advances toward her. And she said, I then slapped him in the face. She wanted the parents' relationship with this couple to end. Don't invite him over here again. Don't see him again. The man did something horrible to me. The parent's friend was asked about this, and he denied it. No, nothing of that kind happened. Ida's father then believed his friend on what happened. He didn't believe Dora. Dora was the liar in the situation. The man said no. The child said yes. I side with my friend, the man, not my child. She started keeping herself alone. I'm going to stay in my room. I'm going to be reclusive. Okay, I'll come down and sit at a table for dinner, but then I get to go back to my room immediately. And she started talking openly about suicide, not being a part of this world anymore. My own father doesn't believe me. Ida's father took her to see Freud. They lived in the same city. She was 16 years old at the time. This occurred in 1898. There's a picture of the graphic as Freud and Ida Bauer about the age when they met. Ida explained that her father was having a sexual affair, now a different story than she told to her parents. He's having a sexual affair with a friend's wife. These people come to our house, we go to their house, etc. My father's pawning me off to his friend in return. I get to have sex with your wife. You can have sex with my daughter. So that becomes Ida's story. Freud wrote about her case. Freud's Dora, a biography of Ida Bauer Adler. And this is a book written by a different person. So Ida had a regular cough, but there was no inflammation that could be found. What's going on with this cough? Also, on occasion, she'd lose her voice, couldn't talk, I can't talk. And Freud told her he believed her story. I believe what you told your parents about your friend. So this is a person in a position of authority that's telling her that it's okay, I believe you. The cough stopped. So that part of it got cured anyway. Ida Bauer had two dreams, and we're going to take a look at the elements of these two dreams. The house is on fire in a dream. Her father wakes her up. You got to get out of the house. Hurry up, please. She dresses quickly. Probably shouldn't have done that. Just get out of the house. Her mother's looking around for her jewelry box. I need to find this thing before I leave the house. The fact is, you're in grave danger. Get out of the house. Father yells at the mother, get out of the house. They get outside, and then she wakes up. So the house is on fire. Her dad wakes her up, saving her life. She dresses. Mother can't find her jewelry box. Father yells at the mother. They all get out of the house, and the dream ends. Second dream. Freud talked about this in his writings about Dora. She's in a strange town. She can't find her house. Uh, why is everything so different? She finally sees the house and gets into her room. And on her bed from her mother is a letter, and it says, "Your father has died. Uh, Take a train to the hospital, to his death site." She can't find a train station. It's not the town that she's living in, but the house is there. So finally, she finds her mother at a cemetery. Then she wakes up. So strange town, but finds her home. Letter on her bed. Your father has died. She takes a train. Can't find the train station. Uh, Finally finds her mother at the cemetery. Freud interprets the dreams sexually. That's a major item in Freudian psychology. He says it's the Oedipus complex. Ida desires her father. Uh, Her virginity's at stake in this dream. There's a jewelry box that can't be found. Uh, the death of her father saves her from the Oedipus complex. Uh, and of course, this is a Greek myth. You know, you have Oedipus, his father dies and he wants to marry his mother. So you have Freud says this is definitely sexual in nature. The jewelry box is part of that her mother was looking for, is really a sexual item, and it's about her father and her father being lost, and now she cannot have a sexual relationship with her father. Jewelry box in the 1800s was seen as representing the female genitals. Her father's friend had given her a jewelry box. That's why the accusation against him came from her. This is according to Freud. Endless walking, not finding what you need. She's looking for her house in this town. Then she's looking for a train station that she can't find. Finally, finds a cemetery. Freud says you're not finding what you need. This is a search for sex in the adulthood, the acceptance of sexual items in adulthood. Freud also saw just a simple fear. She had reported that she had cousins who were always playing with matches. That's a simple fear. So some of the dreams that she told about, involved not finding things and having simple fears also. In addition to dream therapy, Freud practiced hydrotherapy. That's where you soak in a tub. So in this top image here, you put a person in a warm tub. It's relaxing. And afterwards, they may be more likely to talk to you about things they've been unwilling to tell you. They also have electroshock therapy that was used during this period of time. They'd place a device on your temples and then put an electrical shock through it. that would calm you and put you in a position to talk more freely, hopefully. Uh, and it calms the person. You know, the bottom image here is from the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson. And he's being given some electrotherapy. My brother was an actor. He was 7 years older than me. When I was in high school, I would take a date to plays that my brother was in. And he got noticed and he got a contract at MGM. So he went to live in California and he needed a roommate. So he put a sign up on a bulletin board in one of the MGM buildings and for 2 years lived with Jack Nicholson, pictured here. My brother got drafted and had to serve in the army in Germany where he did plays at forts. That's how he got separated from Nicholson, or he might have been somebody. Nicholson might have taken him along with him. They stayed in touch till my brother died in 2015. They would talk on the phone. This is Freud's book on dreams, first published in 1899, still in publication. This is a photo of my copy of it, and you can see it's been used. Here we have wrinkles and so forth, and translated by Dr. A. Brill. He was a friend of Freud's, translated into English. Freud's conclusions. Ida suffers from petite hysteria. That means small hysteria, small fears. And it's due to sexual advances. She's come of age. People are looking at her in a different way. Men are wanting to talk to her. She fears this coming adulthood. Petite hysteria, small fear. Ida quit the therapy after just 11 weeks. Freud saw this as a personal failure, that she wouldn't stay for a longer period of time. Freud criticized on the publication of the book. His critic said that he was involved in mental sex, and this is very inappropriate for a medical doctor. And so consequently, this really displays Freud's problems, not other people's problems. And it's a criticism. Years later, there's more acceptance. He cured her cough. That went away. She was shown the dysfunction of her parents' world. And because Freud believed what she had told him. And that was an aid to her coming of age. Freud criticized today negative comments. He was insensitive to teenage females. Frequently, these were frequent patients of Freud's. He was phaliocentric, male-oriented in his view of the world, more like a policeman, less like a doctor. Male power over women's bodies. You know, men are going to do this and that, and it's okay, accept it. These criticisms were then made of Freud by other professional people and people generally. Today, more positive view. Ida Brouwer was not a feminist role model. She quit the therapy after just 11 weeks. Leave Freud alone. Next case study that we're going to look at is Little Hands was his nickname. I should have put that in quotes. Herbert Graf lived from 1903 to 1973. died at the age of 70 years and a patient of Sigmund Freud's. Freud asked friends of his in Vienna, he said, I want to know more about children, especially sexual curiosities. Please observe your child and write to me about what you see. Uh, this was Freud developing what is called his infantile sexuality theory. So sex is a big role in Freudian psychology. Tell me what you see in your kid and in your kids. And, I don't think he said sex. He may have, but he just, that's what he was interested in. So when he'd received something like that, that was somebody he wanted to talk to. Max Graf, the father of Herbert, was Freud's friend, wrote about his son's fear of horses because Herbert was 4 years old when he saw an accident with a horse-drawn cart in Vienna, and the cart collapsed. So that was scary, and he's 4 years old. Now, of course, this isn't Herbert. It's a young woman, modern image, standing at a crosswalk. Herbert became fearful of horses as a result of viewing this accident at the age of 4, and this accident being in the street. And consequently, he didn't like streets. Here's this young girl standing, wondering, can I cross now? So on. And he didn't like being near horses. So this accident led to a fear of streets and a fear of horses. This is neurotic behavior, a neurosis, as opposed to psychosis. Neurosis is mild. Psychosis is much more serious complication for a person. Equinophobia is what Herbert Graf's difficulties were defined as. Anytime you see that word phobia, it means fear. And equine, it refers to horses. So this is a fear of horses that had been developed by Herbert Graf due to the age 4 accident. Herbert's father thought this was very embarrassing. Go out with his son and he'd have to guide him across the street. They'd have to walk as far away from horses as they can. And it, IR, not but it was due to his mother's caresses, according to Freud. A concern over the large penises of horses, Freud said also. And they're generally hanging down and very visible. Freud saw it as anxiety, as a fear. A daughter had just been born in the family. Here's a daughter and here's a young son, the opposite of Herbert Graf's situation. But Herbert Graf is, he's like 4 years old, and a daughter is born into the family. Now, he becomes curious about where babies come from, starts getting information from his parents. And there were probably some concerns also about the attention that the child gets. Needs lots of attention, can't do anything on its own. And he's being misplaced. So Freud saw it as fears. Freud wrote Herbert's fears were the result of sexual development, and he had unanswered questions. Where did this baby come from that's now a part of the life of our family? Herbert becomes concerned with excrement, his bowel movements, and he becomes fearful of them. And on top of that, where do babies come from? So Herbert's father explains sexuality to him, and the fears disappear. Criticism of this: Freud and Herbert's father planted ideas in the boy's head. Uh, that's that's not a good thing. Herbert went on to become an opera director. He engaged in the world premieres of many famous operas, worked with Maria Callas, pictured here, probably the most famous female opera star in the history of operas. He was the director of opera houses in Europe, in Munster, Germany, Breslau, Frankfurt, Salzburg. He was Jewish. He escaped the Holocaust, came to the United States, and for 24 years, from 1936 to 1960, was the director of the Metropolitan Opera in New York City, one of the top jobs in opera. The picture here is not the opera house that he was head of. It's the current Metropolitan Opera House, built in 1966. And there's a whole area on the southwest corner of Central Park that was built in the 1960s. And it's all arts, music of different. There's an orchestra hall and an opera hall, and I think there's maybe half a dozen buildings there. Uh, so anyway, this was a big deal. And for 24 years, he became the head of this place. So very successful in his adulthood, and wise to have left Germany early and Austria. This is a picture of Herbert Graf as an adult. Next case, Ernst Lanzer, known as Rat Man. Here's a drawing of Lanzer, who was an attorney. Most say that the patient that Freud described without a name in the description was Lanzer. Some people say it was another patient of Freud's named Paul Lorenz. Anyhow, we're going to assign it to Lanzer and talk about it. He had very negative ideas, concerns, fantasies about rats. Here's a rat. Veterinarians say that rats make great pets. So get yourself a rat that needs a cage, but you can pet it like you do a cat. Freud wrote about this case, and it was in 1909. Notes upon a case of obsessional neurosis, in other words, lighter mental illness. That's neurotic behavior, like nail biting or something. Psychosis is very serious. You might start considering suicide. You might hide out in your room, or find. But it's just a much more serious item. So you got neurosis, mild mental disorder, psychosis, serious mental disorder. Well, the obsessive thoughts about rats continues. Freud treats him with hydrotherapy. We talked about that, the warm water baths. And in 1907, he goes to Freud because he'd read some of Freud's articles, and that's when the treatment begins. Here's another picture of hydrotherapy. Here the tub is being covered to maintain the warmthness and give the patient a more calm feeling also. And after a while in the warm tub, you're awakened and you're allowed to clean yourself, and then you can sit with a therapist. And the hope is you're now calm and feel freer to say something, say things, tell about yourself. Symptoms of the rat man, Ernst Lanzer. Uh, he had a lot of anxieties about other people who had misfortunes, friends, family members of his. Thought about the death of his father, even after his father died. It was obsessive thinking about why did his father die? Why did I say these things to him, etc. Freud used free association on Lanzer. Now, you might remember from previous lecture, free association is where you say a word and then the patient immediately says a word back to you. And research was done on what's a common response among people. If it's an uncommon response that the patient makes, you make note of that and you can talk about it later. So Freud would say blue, the color. Most people would say red, green, yellow, some other color. But some people might say, Freud said red, the patient says blood. That's distinctively different. Freud would write it down, talk to the patient afterwards. Uh, Free association is used, uncovers repressed thoughts, things that you've forgotten about. You've depleted them. You've repressed them. Lanzer described a torture method from his military experience when he was in the military. And that was people were placed in a very large box and then a rat was thrown in there. So he talked about that with Freud. The rat image stayed with him because of the way that was used as a torture technique. He feared that this might happen to somebody he knew, a friend of his, a family member. How horrible it would be for this to happen to somebody he knew. Freud treated him by talking about thoughts he had repressed from his childhood. Tell me about things in your childhood that people told you not to do. People were telling, we do not do that. Boys don't cry, something like that. This Freud thought this was expressed as a rat anxiety in adulthood. What we're really talking about is your childhood and what people told you, especially negative things or very authoritarian things that they told to you. Now you're expressing that as an adult by concerns over rats. This is the drawing of Lanzer again. Later researchers wanted to interview him to see if Freud was accurate in his descriptions of what happened. But he died young at age 36. He was killed during World War I, very early in 1914, very early in the war. Next case, Dr. Daniel Schriebner, 1842 to 1911. So he was about 79. He was at the age 69 years old when he died. Schreiber was a judge in Germany. So he had a doctorate, wasn't a medical doctor. He was a doctor of jurisprudence. And he was not a patient of Freud's, but Freud wrote about him. Freud had read a book by Schreiber, and here is the cover of the book. Memories of My Nervous Illness is what the title is in English. And it was published in 1903. Daniel Paul Schreiber. And it's memories about his nerves or nervous illness. He was in a mental hospital in Schonstein Castle in Pirna, Germany. And this is a picture of the hospital. Gorgeous looking place. Couple of towers on each side and a large section in the back. And you can see it's built on a hilltop here. There are walls that have been created. And that's where Schreiber was a patient. Published, Freud published his ideas in 1911. Now, Schreiber's book was written in 1903. And the title of the paper that was written by Freud was Notes upon an Autobiographical Account of a Case of Paranoia. So autobiographical. Schreiber wrote a book about himself. That's self-biography. And Freud says he had paranoia. What's paranoia? Somebody is out to get me. Great fear about your personal existence. Paranoia. Someone's out to get me. This is Richard Nixon. Somebody did get him. He frequently spoke about fears that he had and finally was placed in a situation where he had to resign from the presidency. Because if he didn't, he would have surely been impeached. They had the votes to impeach him. Schreiber's first symptoms appeared in 1884. He was a candidate at that time for the Reichstag. That's the German Congress. And he experienced hypochondria. That's fear. And it's fear of a serious disease coming his way. So he was treated for 6 months. 9 years later, in 1893, it came back. The hypochondria did. Fear of diseases. And now he was suffering from sleepiness also. Pictured here are a couple people that can't get to sleep. One is wide-eyed, one is sitting up in bed. What do we do? He fantasized that the world was really screwed up and it needs a new population. God has come to me, he said, and I am to give birth to a new species for the earth, and it will save the world. And here's a picture of an alien female. So what does Sigmund say about this? Thoughts suggest that he was having lots of doubts about religion. And he has this Redeemer delusion. I have been selected to bring about a new species. And this has elevated me to a position where I am now capable of saving the world from the unfortunate things done by Homo sapiens. He is emasculated. That's a term for castration anxiety. It's about losing your strength, your male strength. It's about losing your vigor, your effectiveness. And frequently it comes with gay impulses, according to Freud. Next person that we'll talk about is Sergei Pankiev, known as Wolfman. Lived to be 93 years old, 1886 to 1979. Most, probably all of us in this audience were old enough to have interviewed this guy. So the Wolfman, what's up with this guy? He was a patient of Freud's 1910. Freud nicknamed him Wolfman because of a dream that he related to Freud. And Freud published this case in 1918. Here is a picture of the book from the history of an infantile neurosis. Pankiev described 4 items. When he was 18 years old, he'd been having sex, and transmitted to him was a venereal disease. And he also stated that he had difficult bowel movements, uh, retention of the bowels. And he was separated from the rest of the world. I'm not like the rest of you people. I'm not joined with you. I'm alone. And he felt there was a veil over his head. I am being hidden for some reason. Freud told Pankiev that there would be a limited number of sessions. Freud feared that the guy could resist what Freud wanted from him after too many sessions. So he said, okay, I don't know the number, but he said, okay, there's going to be 10 sessions. This is number 2. You got 8 more after this one. And then that will end it. Pankiev was a good child, but as he got older, he became very combative within his family. His parents took a vacation. They didn't take him with them. Instead, they hired a nanny to care for Sergei Pankiev. And that had a big effect on him. Lots of rejection. Parents blamed themselves for what was happening to him, the fact that he was barking back at them anytime they'd talk to him. He was being difficult with other children. So combative, and it was, according to Freud, it hinged on a vacation that the parents took alone. Pankiev also talked to Freud about wolves and the fear of wolves that he had. And that he once looked outside a window and saw wolves in the woods. He told his family about this, and his sister, being mean, got a bunch of pictures of wolves and showed them to him. Ha ha. Stuff like this was shown by his sister. She was playing games. Pankiev, he also stated that he had a fear of other things, other creatures. Beetles, pictured here, caterpillars down here, and butterflies. So a fear of beetles, caterpillars, and butterflies, in addition to being the wolf man. He chased a butterfly once, got very fearful about it, ended the pursuit, and from that point on was afraid of butterflies. Leptodopterophobia is the name of the fear of butterflies. Wolfman's situation was not limited to fear of animals and insects. He had a zealous religious worship routine. Every night before he went to bed, he would go throughout his house and he would kiss all the icons that were hanging on walls, on doors, sitting on top of a desk or some other uh, item. And the whole time he was thinking blasphemous thoughts. Blasphemy is anti-religious thoughts. So here's a guy, zealous religious worship routine, regularly going to masses, and yet had in his house icons that he would kiss before he went to bed. Yet being having horrible thoughts about religion, anti-religious thoughts in the process. He had a dream in bed, and this was looking out the window, and there's a pack of wolves in the forest. The wolves all had different tails. Some were very short, some were much longer, and the wolves were all looking at him. They were watching me, was the story that he told. There's a wolf with a short tail. Where did that come from? Well, he asked his grandfather about it, and his grandfather said, wolves lose their tails because they fish with their tails. They stick their tail in the water, and then sometimes too big a fish will come along and bite off their tail. Freud saw this as a Pankiev having a fear of sexual performance. Can I do it? Can I do it well? This contributed to the anxiety that he had. Anxiety is fear. Next patient, and I think this is the last one, finally. And then we will have finished Freud and we'll be going to questions. Bertha Pappenheim, known as Anna O, was her nickname, lived to be 77 years old, 1859 to 1936. Here are 3 photos of her at different stages of life. Here is a young woman, middle-aged, and a seriously old person. And it's Bertha Pappenheim. Freud didn't treat her. So this was not a patient of his, but it was a patient of a close friend of his, Joseph Brauer. He did the treatment, and it was 2 years, 1880 to 1882. Pappenheim was in her early 20s when she was receiving this treatment. Now, together, Breuer and Freud wrote a book about the case in 1895, 13 years after her treatments had ended with Breuer. Breuer eventually broke with Freud, didn't like his sex theories. Pappenheim hysteria. There's 9 systems or 9 symptoms that we're going to talk about. What's hysteria? It's uncontrolled and exaggerated emotions, and she gets to be fighting and angry with people or shows disgust or any of these items here, overtly happy. So uncontrolled, exaggerated emotions is hysteria, and that's what she was diagnosed with. And we're going to look at 9 symptoms that she had. Number 1 is paralysis or paresis. And she had this in her right arm and leg. Hemiplegia, half of the body. So it was a kind of a paralysis, and she could hardly use those arms and limp with that leg. Hydrophobia is Again, a phobia, so it's fear. Hydro is water. So this is a fear of water. I don't want to drink it. I don't want anything liquid. So she was afraid of waters. I think I'll have a drink. Thank you. As a child, she saw a dog drinking out of a glass that was used by humans. And she related this to Breuer, and it kind of was the origin of her not wanting water. Dogs have been there. Item 3, involuntary eye movements are a symptom of this, known as neuralgia, and it can include a squint. You squint your eyes and look like you're having facial pain. And she reported to Brower that everything I see is bigger than it actually is. It's all oversized. And if I squint, I can make it kind of smaller. So neuralgia or squinting was a symptom that she had. She knew several languages. She would be talking to you, and in the course of a sentence, she would speak English, German, and French in the same sentence. Different words for different languages. This is known as aphasia, mixing languages when you speak. Aphasia. She also had hallucinations. Black snakes, skeletons were reported by her to Breuer. She took naps during the day, waking up with screams frequently. And she'd been dreaming about animals, other fearful things. So daily naps with nightmares. Nightmares account for the vast majority of dreams that people have. Some say about 90% of all dreams are nightmares. False pregnancy, was a symptom that she had. Pseudocesis. Here's a picture of a woman not pregnant in reality here, but in the mirror she sees herself as carrying a child. 8, amnesia. She'd forget about stuff. You know, the Breuer would say, well, last time you were here, you talked about, she'd no, I didn't. And she'd forget about events. She'd forget about actions that she'd taken, including these recent visits with Breuer. So how do I get to her? She doesn't remember, but doesn't want to remember what's going on here. Number 9, she had mood swings. This was anxiety, which is a fear that would move to depression and then to relaxation. So you get somebody moving through these stages, such as are seen in the graphic. So her 9 cyst symptoms: paralysis, couldn't move her right side; hydrophobia, fear of water; involuntary eye movements, moving her eyes and not realizing it, looking at people funny; mixed languages, speaking several languages in a single sentence; hallucinations, seeing things that weren't really there; naps that had nightmares in them; false pregnancy, amnesia, forgetfulness, and mood swings. She reported daydreams that she had, as well as night dreams. She would be talking to sick patients at their bedside, and she would daydream about this. and she would have night dreams about doing it. Reported talking to her father, who was bedridden and had tuberculosis and was dying. So lots of involvement with sick people in these daydreams and night dreams, and expressed that more than anything, she wanted to protect the sick. Under hypnosis, now, Breuer used hypnosis on her. She recalled and spoke about these items. There was also talk therapy that she did with Breuer. And after 2 years, Breuer said she appears to be in great shape now. She's fine. So the sessions ended. 6 months after Breuer ended the treatment, she was hospitalized. At this hospital, Bellevue Sanatorium. Sanatoriums are what mental hospitals were called back in the 18 and early 1900s. And I mean, I remember that term being used from when I was a child in the 50s. And she was at Lake Constance in Switzerland, is where this sanatorium is located. Here's Lake Constance. Now, here's Switzerland down here. Here's Lake Constance way up here. It's on the border with Germany. And here's the nation of Liechtenstein, that very tiny little nation. That borders Switzerland, as does Austria. And here you have France. So anyway, this is where, this is Lake Constance, and that's where she was treated 6 months after she had finished with Breuer. Critics of psychoanalysis in the late 1800s used this case of Bertha Pappenheim as proof that Freud's method of psychoanalysis doesn't work. She got sick again, and soon. 20th century medical doctors think that she probably had a brain disease known as meningitis. And here's a picture, a graphic that shows normal meningitis, and here's one that shows meningitis infection. So they think she may have had a physical disease. Pappenheim recovered. She became a feminist, became very famous throughout Europe and the Americas. She moved to Frankfurt, Germany, located here, and became known all throughout Europe in particular, but in the Americas too. In 1895, she managed an orphanage, enjoyed a lot of children's literature, read Hans Christian Andersen books to the children in the orphanage, and she wrote children's books herself. Here is one, Bertha Pappenheim. Name of the book is Sisyphus. Sisyphus was this Greek legend of a man moving a huge rock up a hill, and he'd get almost to the top where he could get it stationed, and he'd lose control of it and roll back down the hill, and he'd have to go back down and try it again. And he was doing this in perpetuity. So this is a story she wrote about Sisyphus. Here's a poem by her. Love did not come to me, so I vegetate like a plant in a cellar without light. Love did not come to me, so I resound like a violin whose bow has broken. Love did not come to me, so I immerse myself in work, living myself sore from duty. Love did not come to me, so I gladly think of death as a friendly face. So there's a poem by her. She translated the works of, or one of them by Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley that fit with her feminist movement. And the title of the book was Vindication of the Rights of Woman. Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley was married to the famous poet Shelley. She Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley also wrote Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus. There's been many movies made about that book that she wrote and created. Frankenstein, create a person. And of course, Frankenstein is what the person that was created is called. The fact is, in the book, there was Dr. Frankenstein who did the creation of a person from parts from many people. She started a Jewish charity to combat female slavery. Jewish men could leave their wife and children and remarry, but women could not get divorces. Subsequent children could not be Jews. People's daughters were sold to wealthy families, forced into prostitution. She stated or started the German Women's Association to stop this practice among Jews. 1904, she founded a group called Women's Relief. Here's a stamp about that. See, here you can see the images of women's. This is her burial place. She headed the League of Jewish Women for 20 years, 32,000 members in 82 groups. That's about 390 people in each group. This was a giant group of women across Europe. She died in 1932 or 36, and then the group disbanded in 1939 because of the Nazis. She's buried in Frankfurt, Germany. Here's a memorial stamp that was made of her. And finally, we are done with Freud. Next week, Carl Jung. So thank you. Let's see.
Okay.
There we go.
So
Thank
I
sorry I ran a little late there, but do we have questions?
we do. I'm going to make a quick comment. I put in chat a link to an article I found called After Hysteria, How
Oh,
Anna O became Bertha Pappenheim. And I it's basically it's a review of a book that we do own in the library called The Secret Mind of Bertha Pappenheim, the woman who invented Freud's talking cure.
oh,
It's a 2024 book, and if you're interested in finding out more about Bertha, you can find that. Check many of your libraries. I'll try and put the title in the chat too. Okay, but now we'll get to some of the questions we have. So, um, was Freud ever psychoanalyzed, and if so, by whom?
hmm. By himself.
Ah, Doctor Heal Thyself kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
somebody says, I had a wonderful pet rat. What's my sexual dysfunction?
oh. Uh, well, of course, many would say it means something else.
You know,
Animals, there's been a lot of work done on people with pets and why we have animals and why they become a part of the family. Uh, they're really seen as something incredibly special
hmm
and become members of the family. And a lot of traits that we have, we then assign to the animals. It's interesting. We had a pet. The only pet we've ever had was a cockatiel, a bird. Flew around the house. We had it for I can't remember how many years. And we'd go to a veterinarian and say, "Oh, the bird does this and that," and he'd smile and grin. And so I read stuff about it, and basically what they say is we really assign a lot of human characteristics to our pets,
hmm
to our animals, and no, I think and another thing I read about was how rats in particular are just gorgeous little pets. They love to be petted and scratched and uh, So anyway, did Freud what did Freud say, or how did Freud get analyzed? I don't know. I can
So,
look it up for next week. I don't know if he. I'm
if he
sure
ever was.
he had a group that he started, and
Okay.
I suspect they talked about each other a great deal. And many people from that group uh, separated from him because of his theories. They didn't like what he was saying. So I'm sure they talked about all that sort of stuff among themselves. It was more like Adlerian psychology, it was group discussions.
Hmm. Now, do you think did Freud's assignment of nicknames to his patients exhibit a prejudgment or subconsciously influence his view of them and their condition?
Well, that I don't know. I've always assumed that they told him, I go by, and they had
Okay.
a nickname. Yeah. Um, we see this today in a very negative way. Donald Trump has nicknames for people, and they're virtually always very negative. And there's a lot of people that do that sort of thing. They call you something, and everybody laughs. It's humorous. And sometimes it gets picked up then as a nickname. Uh,
Part of it, patient confidentiality, but
yeah. When he wrote about some of the people he wrote about, he didn't use their real names.
so okay. Is Pappenheim hysteria still considered a disease today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Hysteria's, we, I would imagine that every single human person has a fear of some sort or fears of some sort.
So,
We hear about fear of heights. People walk across the bridge, my personal fear of heights is not dramatic, but it takes me. I stand back from the railing a little bit, take a step toward it. After 3 steps, I'm at the railing, and then I bend my head and I can look down, and I'm not afraid anymore of the height. Uh, Balconies. Well, my wife had a friend in high school who started to work in theater, and we would visit her in New York. She lived a couple blocks off of Times Square on the 44th floor of a 50-story building. I think it took me 15 minutes out on that balcony before I actually walked up to the railing and looked down, you know. But that's not much of a fear of heights. But what my point is I think everybody has fears of some sort and multiples of them. So no, it's common.
okay. Feel free to ask more questions, people. Um, okay, I was just typing something to Grayson here, but I'll just ask him. Can I listen to last week's lecture again? I missed part of this lecture logging in with problems. So, Grayson, do we have an estimated timeline on when we're going to get
Yes, yeah, we'll have this week's, last week's, and part one up by the end of this week. So check back by Friday, and you should see those on the OLLI at University of Minnesota YouTube page.
okay. So, yep, just so everyone knows, yeah, we have some new
So check daily and
right. We have some new guidelines that have to be followed with closed captioning, and so it takes just a little longer to make sure that we're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's in the closed captioning. So, um, that is happening. Okay, no questions at the moment, but I have one in terms of going back to Dora. Um, it's striking me. I'm like going, and this is something that comes up in the one article is talking about. It sounds to me like she was stating something. No one believed her. Freud said he believed her, but then he explained it all away, and she stopped going to see him. And I'm like, was she just telling the truth all the time? But you know what? We can't, that's taboo and we can't bring that up. So if we did bring it up, no, we have to nail this under the floor because we would be frowned upon for suggesting that people would sexually abuse a child. And that somewhat seems um, could be the case here. And
Yep.
because two things going against her, she's a child, she's a woman, um, in terms of society at that time. So,
Yeah, this it could, I mean, looking at it, it could be a very strong bias against women and young women in particular. I think Freud had a bias about that, no question about it.
yeah,
And the role of women in Victorian times, I mean, was very, I mean, even in our times.
right.
When my wife graduated from college in the 1960s, she couldn't get into law school. She couldn't get into med school. It wasn't a place for women, or it was seldom done, and that has changed dramatically. We are now in veterinary schools, have a majority of women.
Yeah. Okay, well, we have a minute left. And our last question is, how do you access the recordings? Okay, two ways. OLLI has a search OLLI at University of Minnesota on YouTube, and that should connect you to um, the OLLI lectures, and that includes other ones besides these on there. So that's one way to do it. The other way is to go to the Ramsey County Libraries, and under events and classes, you will see there. He just provided a link, so click on that and make it a favorite, and that way you'll get directly to um, previous recordings. Otherwise, as I was saying, on the Ramsey County website, it is, let me go there. I'm going to put the link there. It's under events and classes, recorded library programs. And let's see if I can.
For Ollie, I just type in Ollie MN space OLLI space MN, and it goes right to Ollie, Minnesota. And,
So,
and
okay. And I'm grabbing the link because as soon as he lets me know, I put him up on our website. So let me add that into link here.
yeah,
And I want it to everyone. Just click on either of these, bookmark them, and you'll be able to actually get in. Um, One last question. Are people still classified as anal retentive?
yes,
So I say we use the term all the time too, so
yes. Well, and for some people, it just happens occasionally. You're in and out of it. And
so okay, well it is 2:01 and thank you everyone for showing up and asking questions and being engaged and thank you JB for sharing with us today and I just wish everyone a good day and we will see you next Wednesday.